Hello again, this is Rich Troxler, aka Rich Trox, and welcome to another edition of my Reading the Beach videos. When it comes to catching fish consistently, being able to read water and beach structure is a valuable asset. I've put out several videos on the subject already, and once you've developed your water reading skills, you'll never look at water the same way again. In this video, we will be looking at an ocean beach, and it'll be helpful if you have an understanding of how waves work and to be familiar with the terms I will be using. So if you haven't already done so, it will be to your benefit to watch the first video in my Reading the Beach series on understanding wave and wave action prior to viewing this video. Before I go any further, let me get the disclaimer out of the way. The information provided on this video is based exclusively on my own experiences and should not be considered the be-all and end-all of fishing. It is intended solely to stimulate thought, provide direction, and encourage experimentation, in the sincere hope that it may be of help to you on your surf fishing journey. End of disclaimer. This is the second video of my Practice Makes Perfect series, and we're going to look at what many of you see when you walk out onto the beach on an average calm summer day. In other words, a plain, nondescript stretch of beach without much obvious structure to speak of. I had my GoPro camera with the fisheye lens on my head running while shooting with my new camera on a tripod. Turns out I didn't have my new camera set to the highest resolution or frame rate. So bad on me for not reading the instructions. Anyway, I'll be splicing back and forth between fisheye and regular view, just because it gives a better perspective overall of what this particular beach had to offer. When I walk out onto a beach for a first look, I have a mental checklist I go through, and you should have one also. I always note the stage of the tide and the direction of the wind. Is the surf big or small? This is important as to how it pertains to measuring water depth based on wave break. And I always look at the shoreline to see what the ocean currents have been doing to it. Sand doesn't disappear, it always goes somewhere. Is the exposed shoreline smooth, scalloped, dug out in spots, cliffed? These are all clues as to what lies beneath the adjoining waters. Then I look for the big structures. Is there a sandbar? And if so, how far out is it? How deep does the trough appear to be? Are there any obvious cuts, dips, or rips? How about points and holes? Are there any of those around? If I plan on coming back that night to fish the area, I make sure I take all the ranges or locational info I need to be able to find these areas at night. Although to be honest, even on dark nights, I can usually find them just by looking at the water. So I'm going through my checklist. The tide is pretty much high, the wind is light, onshore, and from a southerly direction. The surf is medium to small. The shoreline is fairly straight and smooth, with only slight scalloping. There is no cliffing or any signs of recent storms or violent weather. As for structures, this beach doesn't appear to have any sandbars whatsoever. There are shallow areas that were probably points at one time, but other than that, you don't have a lot of obvious structure. But that doesn't mean you don't make choices, and for me the choices are obvious. Let's start with the shallow areas. There were a cluster of them far down the beach to the south that I saw when I first walked out. These made their presence known by the spilling breakers rolling over the shallow bottom contour. The bottom contour between where I was standing and the shallow areas to the south appeared to be uniformly deeper, as illustrated by the general lack of offshore waves breaking and the presence of shore break, aka plunging breakers. To the north of where I was standing, there were several shallow areas fairly close together that may have been just one large shallow area with slight dips in it. At high tide it can be hard to tell. Regardless, there was enough information in the waves to tell me what I needed to know. Directly in front of me was the edge where the northern group of shallow areas ended and met the deeper bottom contour that ran south to the southerly shallows I noticed when I first walked out onto this beach. Let's look at how the waves reveal this transition. This footage is of the shallow area and comes from my regular camera. Watch as the larger wave sets break and spill over the shallow bottom contour. When I pan the camera to the right over the deeper bottom contour, the waves don't break offshore because they don't have the shallow bottom to react to. Instead, they roll into shore as plunging breakers. In this footage, you can just see the waves breaking on the shallow bottom contour to the left of the screen, while the waves roll straight through over the deeper bottom contour on the right side of the screen. The panorama view of the GoPro's fisheye lens does a good job of showing both the shallow and deeper bottom contour areas and their associated wave breaks on the same screen. So the point of all of this is that if you adhere to the concept that fish relate to edges, then finding one of the few edges available on an otherwise structure-barren beach is going to give you the best opportunity for success. On every beach, there is always going to be one spot that is better than all the rest, and that's where beach whispering comes in. I'll be following this video up with a companion video on how I would fish this beach so that you can get a complete snapshot of my thought processes. So stay tuned, and remember, practice makes perfect. That's my view from the beach, so until next time, be well and catch 'em up.